with my own study that, you know, that takes that and just launches that in every direction.
That's pretty in-depth, Doctor. And I'd like to also ask you and the audience, we're going to let them hear from you as far as your significant issues with the interpretation of Revelation.
Well, some of the things that I have discovered, now mind you, you remember the first course that we took at Simpson years ago. I always hook into that because that tends to be the foundation of really dealing with eschatology. And eschatology is the field of end times, studying end times. And man, what I've discovered since that time, obviously, my first study had to do with the rapture. You know, pre-trib rapture or not pre-trib. And George Ladd had, yeah, exactly. And see, it really got going in the 70s. That's when it really got going. You know, you look back in some things, you don't know how significant the time period is. But the late 60s into the 70s is the rediscovery, as it were, of really pinpointing, getting into eschatology in a way like never before. Hal Lindsey comes out with his book, Late Great Planet Earth, The Late Great Generation, whatever the name of it was, something to that effect. But he was seen as more pop, whereas some of the other scholars, John Walvoord of DTS here in the Dallas area, George Ladd, Fullerton Seminary, and George Ladd particularly really had an impact on me. I will say that. And he was not preacher of rapture. Yeah. But since that time, I mean, you can imagine the growth dramatically. And so I've really seen some real problems with the book, with the interpretation of the book of Revelation, particularly pre-trib rapture. I can just start off by saying, first off, pre-trib rapture is not in the book of Revelation.
Yeah. And that's the way I learned it. That's why it happened. Really
it's not there. That's something I didn't know when I was a 20-year-old, 70 years old when I was doing that study. I didn't look at it like so. First off, it's not even in the book of Revelation. And to the degree, and that just rips at the foundation of it. Many people, when they try to interpret eschatology, they almost equate Revelation with what Daniel says, with what Zechariah says, with what anybody else says. No, the book of Revelation was written, the last book of the Bible. It is the clarifying book of eschatology. If there's anything that's misunderstood, misconstrued, anything, it gives the clarity to it. It is not one of several books. It is the book. Yes. It is the book. Jesus, as it were, tapped John on the shoulder. That's kind of how I see that first chapter. You know, who is agonizing over what's happened with the church. Agonizing what's happened with his colleagues. He's on an island. And here this man is on the Lord's day, as it says. Worshiping God means he's bowed down. And it's almost as if Jesus comes and taps him on his shoulder. In Revelation chapter 1:19 is the most revealing of verses. There's two verses. Beginning of this book, the first chapter, and the last chapter. In the beginning, he says, I'm going to tell you what's happened, what is happening, what shall happen. That is the scope of what Jesus is going to tell him in the book. What has happened, what is happening, which we got chapter 1 through 3, you know, with the churches, chapters 1 through 3. What's going to happen, which is in his future. What has happened, we see that in one of the major chapters where Satan is thrown down. That's past tense. It's thrown down to earth. All of this is in this book. But you cannot forget, Revelation 1:19, he tells what has happened, what is happening, what shall happen. He covers the whole thing. Revelation chapter 22, he has the warning, don't you add anything to this, don't you take anything away from this. Which means when you're interpreting this book, you got to do it with great caution. It's the most violated book in the Bible, with people coming with all kinds of concepts and forcing it up on this book when he warned. It's the only book with such a warning not to add to it, not to take away from it. So those are some of the major issues that I have with people imposing upon the book. Even this year, or 2016, with a fella from the seminary in Colorado. I think it's Colorado Seminary. Dr. I think his name is Gramacki. And of course, he's part of the pre-trib group there with Tim LaHaye's group down in Southern California. And he actually wrote a concept document that the church is not in Revelation 4 through 19. In other words, once we started going out and say, show us pre-trib revelation, rapture in Revelation. Here comes this guy gonna write, well, the church actually is not there. Excuse me. If you say the church is not there, it's been taken out, but Jesus didn't say it, you making Jesus a liar? Because Jesus said he's gonna tell John what has happened, is, and what shall. And he doesn't put it in his book, rapture of the church, prior to tribulation. Rapture is there. It's just not prior to tribulation.
Yes.
It's just not prior to tribulation.
Yes.
So some of the big issues.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a great question in terms of.